Hello and welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Dave Albert. In this show, I talk about technology, building a company as a CTO and co-founder, and have guests to discuss their roles in technology and entrepreneurship. Today, we're joined by Denham Parry, a co-founder of Cloud Native Wales. Thanks for joining us, Lewis. I really appreciate you.
Thanks very much for having me, Dave. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so if you'd like to give maybe just a little bit of an introduction of yourself and your background.
Sure thing. So, I'm Lewis, and I'm based in Cardiff in South Wales. I'm currently 34 years old at the time of recording, which might help out later on in some of our conversation, trying to understand why I'm here today. So previously I was a C# web developer, back-end developer, team leader, CTO, every title you could give me, I pretty much took. But currently I would say, as well as being the co-founder of Cloud Native Wales, I'm also an instructor with Learn Kubernetes. I'm a speaker, and I recently just fitted my own kitchen. So I'm a kitchen fitter as well, of all things.
Nice. So first, why don't you tell me a little bit about what you do with Cloud Native Wales?
Yeah. So I started attending conferences a couple of years ago, and we'll probably touch on to why it happened so late for me in my career and why it's impacted me so much. But I was having to travel around a lot to be able to go to different meetups and conferences. So I had to leave Wales. I was going to London, if not weekly, every other week I was down there. And I just wanted to bring it back because I was lucky enough to be in a position where I could afford to catch a train. I've got a very good partner who can help look after our son. So I was able to leave home, go and see these talks, hear these new concepts and ideas and bring them back home. But then I realized that other people might not necessarily have that available to them in the South Wales area. So we looked to set up a meetup group to invite speakers across, but also to try and generate some more speakers locally, which we found so many great people where we are. And now we have a monthly meetup. We all get together. We have some inspiring talks, and then usually we go to the pub afterwards to try to write everything else in a whirl. So that's what we're doing with Cloud Native Wales at the moment, and we're looking to expand outside of Cardiff as well, because we're not Cloud Native Cardiff, we are Cloud Native Wales. So we're looking at doing a roadshow around Wales later on this year to try and get some other people involved as well.
Cool. What did you find the most interesting about setting that up? What was surprising?
Initially going into it, I thought it was just going to be like a house party. and back when I was in school, I did some good house parties, but quite quickly, I realized there was so many more stress levels to it than I initially anticipated for. So organizing a meetup, with most things, you've got three things to factor into it. First of all, you need to have a speaker or speakers. So we reached out to a couple of speakers that we liked, and they said, yeah, they're more than happy to come along. Then we realized that we didn't have a venue. So we had to find that, and we got some quotes, but I found out that the first job I had out of school was pushing trolleys in a supermarket. And the colleague that I had at the time is now head of recruitment for a big firm in Cardiff. And so they offered us their office space. So that was great. It's on the 22nd floor and it overlooks the Principality Stadium. So it's a beautiful venue.
Nice.
And then, once we had that, though, then we had to make sure that people would turn up. So with that, it's Meetup. So meetup.com really helped us out with that, in that we promoted our Meetup on there. And it links other people of other similar groups in the area. And so we ended up, I think on our first meetup, we had about 30 people turn up. But nowadays, we can get anything between 50 and 80. So nice. It's definitely a growing community.
Yeah. No, I'm a big fan of meetup.com. In fact, that's how we met, was through a meetup that went to
in November last year.
Yeah. Well, actually, now that we've touched on that, the reason that I initially was interested in talking to you was so much about your talk there that was related to mental health in the technology and startup space. I'm very interested in trying to help shine a light on some of the stresses that can affect those of us in these fields.
Yeah.
So yeah, what brought you to that talk, and what kind of was it about that you might?
So last year, and again, this partially came from our meetup. So running our meetup, we give away conference tickets because, again, the reason we run that is to really help people get into this. But in doing so, there was this conference in London, and they had a speaker drop out. So they asked me, with a couple of days to go, would I mind covering up this conference? And as they've helped me out so much, then I felt like I had to return the favor. And it was for a microservice conference. And I felt that most microservice talks I've listened to always talk about the technology aspect of it and how it benefits us in our business. But personally, my experience of microservices is that it gets us away from a monolith. And the monolith for me took out a lot of my time, effort, and resources, and it will lead me to having burnouts and parts like that. So I felt that this would be a great talk to be able to actually say, can we use microservices to help fix the way that we do things? But then touching on, in this talk, I talked about my previous experiences and my issues with mental health. So I've suffered in the past from depression. I still do occasionally now. But yes. And so then it was a case of trying to put ideas forward as to, well, how can we help each other out within this? Can technology help us out? Really just trying to opening the lid on this topic, because I think it's kind of brushed over. At this moment in time, it's coming a bit more to face. I'm seeing it. I'm seeing people talk about mental health more on Twitter now, and not just within our industry, but in life in general. Yeah,
no, it is gaining some momentum, and it's down to people like yourself who have the bravery to be honest. For the rest of those who still may be suffering, often in silence. So I appreciate it.
Thank you for that. But yeah, it's so part of my experience getting to this point, a lot of the time I've been told just to stiff up a lip and just carry on doing it. And it was very interesting because when I found out that I did suffer from depression, and then I could actually say, okay, so this is what it is. I looked back in my past and I could see times. So there were times when I wake up and I just couldn't get out of bed. I was completely stressed out. I didn't know how to move. And then at the time, it was people would think that Lewis is probably hungover. He was probably out late last night. He was probably enjoying himself because he's this 20-year-old. And it wasn't the case the majority of the time. I should probably say on that. But and then yes, later on in life, when factors come in. So now I've got a young family now. So I've got a 4-year-old son. But it was when he was born, I realized that should be the happiest time in my life, but I wasn't. And this is where conferences do come in. I had to find change because my day-to-day life wasn't working out for me. My 9 to 5, I was now contracting in Cardiff. So I used to consult around the world. But then when I started a family, I decided to move back home because I didn't want to be on the other side of the world. I wanted to be closer to my family. I wanted to be an active part in it. But in doing that, the jobs that I had available to me, they were limited in what I was doing. And so the people that I was working with, they were 10, 15 years older than me. And it was just my luck that the people were more focused on money than actually what we were trying to do and achieve. And for me, I'm more creative than I am financially driven. I like to solve problems. And it just got to a point where over a couple of years, I just completely forgot that's what I was interested in. That's why I ended up becoming a developer in the first place. I didn't become a developer because I wanted flash cars or anything like that.
Yeah.
I became a developer because I enjoyed solving problems as a kid, and I found that programming helped me solve a lot of those. So yeah, I was going in every day. I didn't know why I was going in other than just to get the paycheck to be able to come back home and look after the family. So at that point, I reached my lowest points, but I attributed it more to my job than myself. So I I made a decision to go to a conference in Oslo. Because I just assumed that this was the state of the industry. I assumed that everyone in the industry was pretty much just money driven. And I just thought, well, if I go across to Oslo, if I end up finding that I don't actually connect with anyone within our industry, then I get to visit Oslo, which was on my list of things to do. But then when I got out there, the people were amazing. And it was just hearing so many talks about, inspiring talks as well, about how people are doing things. It was great. And I found this community, which I never thought I needed or had. And so anyway, that just got me to the point where I realized I do enjoy solving problems. And I realized that my mental health was a problem that I needed to solve. So when I came back home, I went and visited my local doctor. And I said, I'm depressed. And so I had some blood tests, and we found out that I've got an underactive thyroid. So I never actually knew what a thyroid. I just know it's in my neck, so I'm not an expert on thyroid. But it wasn't producing enough of a hormone, which can lead to depression. So if it wasn't for actually wanting to try to solve this problem again, then I don't think I necessarily would. I think I would just have my stiff upper lip and just carry on going as things should be. But in saying that as well, though, I've now come to realize that it isn't black or white. This one fix doesn't fix everything for me. It helps me manage it a lot better, and it helps me understand what's going on. Because again, working with computers, I like things to be logical. So if I'm feeling when I'm feeling down and depressed, I like to try to understand why that might be. And so now I have one factor, which it is. But yes, and so I started to look back at my history working with monoliths, and I just realized that all the stress was put on me by the business. So, and I get this with businesses. Like I said, I've had a range of job roles, and when you're supposed to be delivering a product, and that product is supposed to be available 24/7, and you have to do it with as little resource as possible to make as much profit as well. And then you're shipping out code which you're trying to say to people, we need a little bit more time with this. But then when you're saying it to a business, I had people in business just saying, we need it now. If we don't have it now, then no one's going to be able to get paid at the end of this month. And it was that level of stress. And then I didn't want anyone else to have that either. I wanted that buck to stop with me, not because I wanted to be a rock star, because I wanted to allow the people around me to be able to do their jobs properly.
Right.
And yes. And so then monoliths for me just became this monster where it just consumed so much of my time and energy. And like microservices as well. This isn't the silver bullet, because if you got 99 microservices, then you got 99 problems, essentially.
But a monolith ain't one.
Yeah. So it's a different scale. But I feel that it's just this pattern of understanding how we can do things better. And that I do believe that sometimes we are our own worst enemies, and that being a developer, we are the ones creating the product. And so if we think, well, what's going to happen when it does go down? What happens when it breaks? Instead of trying to keep it up and running. So I've been, and again, this is only from attending conferences and listening to other people speak at meetups and such. The concept of fire drills. So within your organization, it might be every Friday you have a warning alarm going off, which is just to test that the fire alarm works. Or once a month, you might have to actually go out to the company car park. And then someone said, we don't do that with our software. And that clicked with me, because I've had moments when everything's broken. Everything's broken, and the only thing I've got is more telephone calls coming through just to tell me that everything's broken. And when you're in that position, if you don't know the drills, if you don't know the route that you're supposed to take to get to that car park, essentially within your own software, so if you don't have these playbooks available to you, then you've got the added stress of having to manage all of this without actually knowing how to solve it. So it was these concepts that really grounded with me, and just thinking, wow, we can actually do things a lot better here.
It's so funny that you bring up fire drills, because I was at an AWS event here in Dublin last week, I think, or maybe the week before. I don't know. Time sort of blends together anymore. But some of what they were discussing just actually triggered a thought in my own head that I'm going to add a few randomized routines within our Slack bot to throw out fire drill scenarios that we could go through on demand or on some sort of time setting, but I haven't implemented it yet, but it's something that's very much on my mind. And in fact, we had a bit of an issue with a test deployment the other day, and a colleague of mine, she said, "You were talking about fire drills, and at least this happened in test and not production." So that was pretty funny.
Well, it's nice to know that you've got one. You don't just have a production environment. That's the nicest thing to take away from that as well.
Yeah, just so long as test is what breaks first every time.
Yeah,
which isn't always the case, unfortunately.
yes, and that's the thing that I'm realizing now. It's when we've been talking about having 100% uptime, and then when we started getting SLAs that were 99.999. And then all of a sudden, businesses took us on board, and it was just a case of, can you do this? And it's like, well, I don't actually know how to. And the thing is that if you're trying to attain 100% uptime, it's not going to happen. I once had a server go offline on a Friday evening, and then I couldn't ping the box at all. And so I rang the data farm, and this is about 10 years ago now. I said, I can't connect to this box. And they said, oh yeah, you can't connect to it because it's currently being moved to another city. And I was just okay, but we need that box now. And they said, well, we can get it back, but it won't be online until Monday. And so, yeah, and there was no way that I could do 100% uptime in there. And that's just a crazy scenario from 10 years ago. But nowadays, it's a case of, if something goes wrong, can we automate it? Can we automate it so that instead of you having to wake up at 2:00 in the morning to have a look at it, get it back up and running, and then be expected to come into the office for 9 a.m. the following morning, later that morning, feel fresh enough to be able to go through the logs and find out what happened. I want to be in a scenario where I don't have to worry about it. I can disconnect from what I'm doing the majority of the time at least, and then come in with a fresh face and be able to go through logs and see, oh, okay, this happened, we can fix it and we can patch it. And so it's more about trying to attain a 99% uptime because you're confident in that it's going to fail. And when it fails, you're confident you can pick it back up to the extent where you don't even have to do that yourself. So,
yeah, exactly. That plus another thing that I'm very interested in trying to move to. Obviously, it's the dream that I'm sure everyone would like to arrive at, but at the moment we're all still striving towards is alerting on trending. So trending potential future events as opposed to existing current events. Sorry, hang on just 1 second. Sorry about that small break there. Do you remember what we were discussing before?
Yeah, we were going towards chaos engineering and about trying to attain 100% uptime, which can never happen, and it usually just causes for people who are trying to maintain it just to burn out. And it's weird. It's having conversations with people. It's the case of usually saying, "Have you ever taken a laptop with you on holiday, or just when you're out with your family? Do you have to make sure that you've got connection to the internet, or make sure that you've got your work email paid, or just knowing that you've got this escape plan to be able to escape from your own life, to get back to your work environment, to be able to fix something." And a lot of people do usually. It's okay, and then it's just, but when are we ever having a break? When are we resting? When are we doing things that actually make us human again? When can we just enjoy our time? And I still see it today. And I think it came from people wanting to become rockstar developers, in that I remember it fondly and thinking, well, if someone needs me, that's amazing, because that means I'm needed. That means I'm doing something because someone needs, not anyone else, but they need me. And quite quickly, I just realized that lots of people need you when you're not really sharing it well. And so now it's more of a case that I really try to focus on sharing that knowledge, and it's trying to share the best practices that we can do, so that I become redundant, where it's just people know exactly what they need to do to be able to achieve their goals. And that's where I feel we need to start going towards. And so talking about it was only this morning I was thinking about it. And so we talk about chaos engineering for our systems, but then equally I've realized now that I've kind of taken some of those patterns and I'm using them for my own personal mental health now, in that like 10 years ago when I was suffering, I couldn't tell anyone because it was seen as a sign of weakness. Mm-hmm. And so I have to have this 100% uptime. I need to be this person who's constantly available and who can do everything perfectly because I'm this rockstar dev. Whereas nowadays, I accept there are going to be times when it's completely out of my control. I'm going to have a bout where I'm not going to be able to do something. I need to have a break. And so now I'm building up my life around that, knowing that at any moment I might not be able to be contactable. And it's creating that safety net as well. So speaking with friends, speaking with family, and just saying this occasionally happens. And so it's kind of just, they text me every so often just to make sure that I'm okay, which is great. But then equally, that helps me with confidence to know that when things aren't going well for whatever reason, I've got someone else that I can reach out to. So.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Back to what you were saying, upper lip, or just carry on, or just get on with it. You wouldn't say that to somebody with a broken leg, and mental health is almost even more impactful than a broken leg. So it's nice to see that it's starting to shift, but still there's so much of that old school thinking that is just faulty thinking.
And we can take examples of what we do for a living. So if you've ever gone into another business and then you have a look at their code base and you're trying to figure out how does any of this work, like you can't see where it comes in and you can't see where it goes out. It's amazing that it's up and running, but you find out that it's been up and running. It's been up and running for 5 years and it's a main income source for this business. And because we can see inside, because we can see these things are broken externally, because people don't even need to look at code. They just need to be able to see the website up and running, or they need to be able to see the invoices that are being generated. For them, that might look like it's healthy. And it's exactly to your point. It's the same with mental health, because if you don't understand mental health, you don't understand necessarily how it can break you. I had a conversation with my dad, and he doesn't understand. He doesn't understand depression. For him, he can't figure that out. And he said it in the nicest possible way to me. And it was really reassuring because he wanted to learn and understand what was going on. But equally, it helped me understand that just because I've got this doesn't mean that everyone else does either. Mm-hmm. But equally, to your point, if someone's got a broken leg, you can emphasize with them that you can see that broken leg. Yeah. And I don't know. And equally, I think growing up, any sign of weakness isn't good. I used to play football as a kid, and so if you got tackled hard and then your foot's hurting, you can't show that your foot's hurting, because if you show that, then they're going to run past you next time. So you've got to look strong and confident. And but then that's what we're kind of taking on into this world as well, where we have to show that we're strong and confident in what we're doing, that we're competent in that we're constantly going to be available. And it's but that's the thing. I don't think we need to. I think with modern practices, and so back to like cloud native and such, for me, it's a case of technology is now getting to a point where it's a case of saying, when things break, how do we rebuild them?
Yeah.
And that works perfectly with me, because then it's like, when I break, how do I rebuild myself? And so if I can know that I can detach away from the things I'm creating, then that gives me enough time to focus on fixing myself as well and making sure that I'm healthy. So,
and right back to your point there with the football analogy, if you had say a hairline fracture that happened to your foot because of the way you took that hard tackle, and you continue to run on it for the rest of the game, by the end of the game, you're going to have a serious problem. It's the same with mental health. If you don't take care of it in the beginning, it's not going to get better on its own. It's just going to continue to get worse and worse and harder to fix the problem in the long term.
And since learning about this with myself, I've been reading a lot of books about it, and and I'm not trained in this either. So
sure. Me neither.
Yeah. This is only talking personally about my own books. Please. Yeah. But it is when you push things away, and they do build up, and it's the worst thing, because usually the smallest thing can break you. Then it's because there's just so much pressure built up behind you And then when it breaks, and then again, from the outside, it looks like the single thing has caused you to completely fall over, which you have completely fallen over, but it isn't because of a small thing, it's because of this multitude of things. But yeah, I don't know if there is a fix for it. At this moment in time, the only fix that I can do is change the way that I'm doing things. And it goes back to this talk about how we are in control of our own day-to-day destiny. It's if we can start building things to help us out as well, then that's going to put us in a much better position than it is if we're just trying to shift code out as quickly as possible, waiting for it to fall over, and someone else pick it up. It's just yeah.
It's that is one thing to consider with all of this, is that with microservices, it is easier to push out more things faster, but also that increases the complexity, which then can increase the cognitive overhead, which can become a stress factor. So just because you can move faster doesn't always mean that you should continue to move as fast as you possibly can without taking time to tend to your machinery. And some of our most important machinery is our mind. So,
with our meetup, we found some people based in Wales. So we've got someone in Wales who works for Netflix. And so they came across and gave us a talk. And they were saying that they've got over 700 microservices, and it's just too much for any one person to manage. So they don't have that. They don't have, because it can't be done. And then it makes me think about the way that we're going forward. We're still trying to do business like we did in, say, the 60s, 70s, or 80s. But now with modern technology, it's advanced away from that. So like within one of Sam Newman's microservices book, he talks about not necessarily having the business domain within your code. So instead of, if you're writing something for accounts, then you don't just call the project accounts or stuff like that, because we're imposing what this has been. We're looking at removing that from the domain. So if we're doing stuff like that as well, it's harder for people to understand, and it's harder. And if we're putting processes in place that are business constructs, then it's kind of breaking these patterns, which makes it harder for us to do as well. And the amount of times I've gone into businesses and it's just saying, you do know this isn't necessarily the best practice, like writing your own security code, for example, like that doesn't feel right. You could have used this, and each time they say, well, that's how we do it here, or that's our secret sauce. That's what we do. And it just adds so much more complexity to it. It adds so much more pressure to trying to do these things. Whereas, yeah, I think we really need people who are driven and focused, that we can believe. So it's, for example, I was working in a business, and one of the architects, he was sat opposite me and his face went completely white. And for 5 minutes, I didn't know what had happened. And it got to the point where I felt like, I better ask, this could be something serious. And so I said, are you okay? And he said, actually, no, I've just received an email with my password in it. And it was, oh, okay. And it's one of these spam emails that when there's been a data breach and then someone's got someone's password, and they've just been mailing everyone who's got the password saying that I've compromised your computer, I've got your passwords, I've got everything you own. I actually believed that someone had compromised his machine. And for me, this was kind of like it was one of the more basic things. So, so from this point as well, make sure you use a password manager or something to that extent. There's a great website, Have I Been Pwned, which is made by Troy Hunt, which helps you see when a password's been, when your passwords have been breached. So I had a notification over the weekend actually saying that one of my other passwords has been taken out now. But the point with this is that these are the people who are steering the ship. And I've always had an issue with trusting captains of my ship. So I think of the business as a ship and this direction that we're going in. And seeing that happen to someone at such a high level within this business, I realized that I did not trust where this business, the direction that this was going in. And I felt like this was not right for me again, because I need to trust that whoever is leading this is taking us in the right direction. And again, I think And this isn't about age or experience or anything like that. It's just about having this knowledge and having the ability to open up and share and learn. And that's where I feel that some of the issues that we have now with this transition towards cloud computing is starting to fail.
So what would you like to see happen in the short term beyond just, what you and I individually can do? What would you like to see within the community?
So I'm seeing more community come together now. Again, I've said development so many times in this, but being a developer, I thought contributing to a community was about me adding code to an open source project. I thought that's the only way that I can contribute to this. But then I've realized that there's so many other ways, and it doesn't even have to be using a computer that I can contribute to a community. So in organizing this meetup and getting people around a table together, after our first meetup, someone mentioned that they had an issue with one of their pull requests on one of their projects, and it was to do with Terraform. And so there was someone else in the other side of the room, and they said, I know Terraform, I can fix that for you tomorrow. And then by 10:30 the following morning, it's merged back into master. They fixed that issue. And it's great because it actually made me realize that, well, even though I didn't do any of the coding for that, we've just created these two people coming together to be able to share that and create and make this happen. And since then as well, it's realizing that there's so many projects where if it's documentation, if it's translation, if it's just checking for bugs, if it's going via demos, just to work on it, you can contribute in so many ways. And again, from my background, I've come from a Windows background where open source was always deemed, well, within the environments I was working in, open source meant that it was full of bugs and that you're going to get compromised and someone's going to steal your details. Yeah. And that's not the case. That's not the case nowadays. And you can see that with Microsoft in that it was over 40,000 projects were open sourced a couple of months ago. And so you're starting to see this push of this direction away from being siloed about being just, we don't talk to any other businesses, to actually, we're going to open source this. You can contribute to it. And I think that's where I see things going. I feel that if instead of just having a CV saying, this is what I've done and these are the skills I have, you're actually just going to have you could just say, look at my public repo. Like you can look at, I've helped fix issues with this. I've contributed to this project here. That's where I feel that we're going. I think that's more of a direction that we're going towards.
How do you think people could bring some of these thought processes into their own daily work, not just the open source initiatives?
I think so. I think it was called brown bag sessions. So I think it comes from the States, from just having your lunch in a brown paper bag and just talking and just sharing your ideas at lunch. So I think just having sharing talks in your office and just saying, if you've seen something online or if you've been to a conference or a meetup and then you liked an idea, share it with your colleagues then. The first talk that I gave was at a previous office that we used to work at. And we did a talk on Kubernetes, and I had a Raspberry Pi cluster. So I had 6 Raspberry Pis that was my own private cloud that I used to call it. Nice. And and so in a lunch break, we just told everyone, well, if you want to come along, just bring your lunch, sit down, and we'll give you this talk that we're going to share at the next meetup that we do. And we had so many people turn up that we've never met before. And it was really good. It helped us because all of a sudden we're communicating with teams that we've never spoken to before. So I guess this is where office politics come in that usually when you're working within your team of, like, say, 7 or 8 people, and then you've got 4 other teams on the same office floor as you. I've been there before and no one's talking to each other. Like, everyone's siloed off on them by themselves. But these people are the most likely to have the same issues that you have as well. Like, and again, this isn't just mental health now. This is just day-to-day issues. This is business politics. This is everything else. And so just being able to talk to someone who's experiencing the same pain points that you have, or just who can also say, well, we fixed it this way. And then it's amazing. And so, yeah, I think communication is key in that aspect as well, in that it's a lot easier just to be hidden behind your desk and just stay behind your keyboard and not speak to someone else. Sometimes we send an email or we Slack them or something to that extent. But actually meeting people and just hearing them talk, it just connects back. It's amazing how much more you get to find out about someone. And I think that's one thing that I look towards is just communication and make it personable as well.
Yeah. And, even if you're not in a large office and want to share those talks with people within your own company, if you're working out of a co-working space like we're in WeWork, they're always looking for different types of events like that. So I'm sure you could always work with the organizers of any of the events within those co-working spaces to do those lunchtime sessions. Obviously not to share your secret sauce or your business logic, but other people will have different input that they could give you to actually make it easier.
Yeah.
And people are usually willing to share as long as you're not direct competitors.
Yes. And that's the thing. You don't need to go that deep as well. You don't need to get to the secret sauce. It's the issue that I have whenever I go to give a talk is that I always want to focus on the hardest bits and talk about that bit at the end of the journey, where these bits are very complex and it's still trying to unravel them, because then it makes me look better. But then actually it's trying to give a talk that you wish you had when you started on this journey. So 3 months ago, prior to giving this talk, what is it that you really wanted to learn? What was the first step? What was the first thing that you could have avoided to prevent from wasting 2 days just because you had the wrong library installed, for instance? It's those things, because it was I've forgotten who it was, but they said just to drop the ladder down to the next person for them to be able to climb up. And that's because by the end of this, you're so deep into the project and it's so much easier to focus on those hard topics, but just showing what's great about what you're doing as well. It's just to inspire people. It's just be able to let people go away, because that's the other thing. Most of the time when people do try to do things, it's on their own. And the amount of times that I've just been at home and it's like 9 p.m. and it's like, right, I'm going to give this a go. And then I hit an error that no one else has hit. And I'm just like, I can't be bothered with this. I'll do something else. So if you can help people out avoid those things, then that's a great way to start as well.
So what's next for you? What do you have going on at the moment?
So I took a sabbatical in September of last year. So I was planning on, my sabbatical was essentially for me not doing my 9-to-5 contracts that I had previously been doing. And then I started doing, I'm now an instructor for a company called Learn Kubernetes. So we do public and private workshops that are, say, 2 to 3 days long, where we get people from containers up onto Kubernetes. So that's what I'm doing predominantly at the moment. I'm also writing content for workshops and blogs for them. So that's pretty much my day-to-day at this moment in time. Going forward, it's just sharing this. When I was younger in my career, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. At the time, I thought, in my early 20s, I thought that money was the most important thing, which I've since found out it is important to have some money to be able to pay the bills and such, but then it doesn't solve all of life's problems. And I find that actually helping people is a really rewarding thing for me personally, and it helps me feel a lot more confident about myself. So going forward, that's probably why I've set up this. Well, I've co-founded the meetup, and now I'm an instructor. I get to help people on their journeys with these things, and it's great because we're building this community, and it's helping others help others. It's just such a great model just for us to push forward.
No, I can identify with that. I've been a programmer since I was 9 years old. Not very good at the time, but I hope that over time now, as I've been doing this professionally for over 20 years, that I've gotten good at it. I realized that it's the problem solving expands beyond just figuring out the right syntax to solve a problem. The problem solving of helping build teams is very rewarding as well. So, not getting stuck on, I used to do code so now I will always do code is not necessarily a truth. It's not a true statement. You are going to evolve over time as well as everything else.
Yes. And to your point there, I think the most rewarding moments I've had in my career is seeing other people progress with this and just being able to be someone who could just help out, just give them, whether it's given an opportunity to someone who's doing their first job just their first job within the industry, or if it's just helping someone get onto that next level. That's the most rewarding parts I've had. But again, I think those are the interesting times because I didn't get into development to be managing people. And when I went into managing people, I thought that was a good thing because I thought that was progression with my career. I thought that's the route that I wanted to go. But then I equally found out that I still enjoy problems. I still enjoyed writing code. So for me, it wasn't necessarily, it's an interesting thing. And I guess that's the thing with experience is that I hated it when I started, when I was saying for my first role, and you need 3 years of experience. And it's like, well, no, I'm ready to go now. I'm all good to go. But the experience that you do get is that you just get to understand aspects of life a little bit differently. You get to see when you do chase something for 3 months and you don't lift up your head, then you realize, oh, actually, that's just wasted 3 months of effort. And it's just being able to share these experiences as well. So,
Sorry, go ahead.
And I was just and it just reminded me, everyone's different in that the things that I'm good at and the things I'm bad at aren't the same as everyone else. We're all completely different in what we do. And we've all got our own pressure points, and there are reasons why sometimes we don't want people to talk to us, but sometimes we need people to talk to us. We're all different. And so trying to construct ourselves to be the same is a very difficult thing for us to do. So
100% agree. Yeah, no, I was going to say something similar of being all different, that some people think that they can't wait to be a manager so that they can, continue their progression up the chain or whatever, and find out that they don't like it, or others who think that they won't like it, then realize the parallels to software development and the solutions to problems being found within the resources you have. So, it's, with everything, being true to yourself and understanding yourself, what it is that you actually like and what you don't like, and trying to go down the right path for you and not the path someone else has followed before that you think you want to be.
Yes. And I think when I started this 15 years ago, it was a case of, I was a C# dev, so I ran Windows, and I'm on Team Microsoft, and Linux is, no, that's not me. I'm not Linux. And then Java, no. And for me, at the time, it was the community was siloing me from everything else. And now it's with Cloud Native, everyone's coming back together again. Everyone's coming back to the table. And this time, instead of saying that's bad or anything like that, it's show me the best that you have. And then everyone's trying to contribute the best that they have now. And it's just amazing just to see the passion that's coming into these projects. And then also just being able to utilize them yourself. So that's why I love containers. I don't have to install libraries of Python, which I don't really understand, or anything else to that effect, to be able to use the project. I can just do a single line command using Docker to be able to set it up within an environment, and then I've got it up and running straight away without having that steep learning curve. I can then break into it. I can go into Docker then and break it all down and understand how it works. But it allows me to do that. And it was only this week with 1.14, Windows is coming into Kubernetes. And so I think there's going to be a flood of Windows devs coming in towards the Kubernetes space now, because their boxes are available to come in. And so I'm very excited to see what happens with the community now and what's going to be spanning from that.
Yeah, no, it's great that so much of this cloud native momentum has started to remove. It will never remove all of the religious technology. So my technology is better than yours because I use it. That's just wasted energy. So it's great to see your .NET versus Linux versus Windows, all those different people basically needing to know the same types of techniques and technologies to serve whatever fits the needs of their problem.
And I think, that's a great point with you as well, because it won't change. And I just compare it to sports teams in that if it's a football team and it's Liverpool or Everton, if you support Liverpool, then you don't like Everton fans, and Everton fans don't like Liverpool fans. But we're always going to have this tribalism of just like we want to have our own identities. Mm-hmm. But then that's the thing. Now it's just a case of, but we can bring it all together. It's like having the international team then, where it doesn't matter which club you play for. It's just that we're bringing the best that we have, and then we're putting it on that stage there. So that's what excites me, because then not only do I get to see this, I get to use it as well then. So it's having the confidence knowing that the stuff I'm running is just the best that it could potentially be from the people who really know what they're doing. And so I get to learn from that as well, which is great for me.
Very nice. So anything else that you wanted to talk about before we wrap it up?
No, if I could go back a couple of years, I just wish I'd done this sooner. So the only issue I have with our meetup is that I didn't get to meet the people that I now know quicker. Because geographically, they're all around me. So I live in a village on the outskirts of Cardiff, and I've already found out there's 4 different people that come to our meetup, and we're in the same village. So now we just meet up in the pub every so often. But to do that, you have to take a risk. And that risk is just putting yourself up on a pedestal. And it's just talking to someone. I never knew if this would be a success. And I still don't, well, it has been a success to date, but I've always got this fear that it's not going to continue. But that's the thing. When you do take a risk, some things don't work out. So we've tried to do things which haven't worked out for us, but then the majority of it has, and you just got to keep pushing forward. So just take that risk that you can right now. So if it is just speaking to that person on the other side of the office that does something similar to you, and just finding out that you both have a love of Raspberry Pis, then just do it, because there's only so much time that we have. So that's the only thing that I'd say from this.
Okay. So do you have anything that, other than to talk to people, that you want everyone to do?
Well, and it's, I guess the other thing is that not everyone's going to, opportunities don't necessarily always fall for you. You have to just push yourself out there and be confident in yourself. If there is, be confident in yourself, take risks, take the opportunities. And in saying all that as well, with mental health, if there is anything, if you do have questions about it, if it's yourself or if it's a friend or if it's a colleague, there are so many resources online. In the UK, we've got Mind. So I think it's mind.org.uk. And it can help relate. But usually the best, and it is back to this point, but usually the best thing that you can do is just try to have a conversation with someone. Mm-hmm. It's the reason I got out of it as quickly as I did with my depression was just from people coming to speak to me, and for me not feeling that I was completely alone. And it wasn't family or friends. It was just other people within the industry started coming towards me, and then all of a sudden I realized actually something wasn't right with me.
That's one thing that you needed support to help you get the help you needed. Talking to other people was never going to fix the thyroid issue, right? So if you have any concerns that you may have some mental health issues, talk to a doctor. I mean, they will not laugh at you. The worst thing that would happen is that you end up paying for some advice to go talk to a therapist. I know that one of the biggest problems with mental health is that it can trick you into thinking that you're alone and it'll never get better.
Yeah.
Don't listen to that. Go talk to someone. It may get better. And that should be good enough to get you to take an action. At least I hope.
Yeah. Well, I got to a point with my mental health where I just assumed that the only way I could feel happy was if I felt down. So when I was having the downs, like when I was upset and just didn't know what was going on, I just assumed, oh, well, this is the only way that I can, the next time I feel happy, that's the only way I'm going to feel happy. And then I kind of accepted the process I was going through. And it's the other relationships around you as well, because when it's locked inside your head and no one else can understand how you're feeling, like I've mentioned my partner before, she's been amazing with me in understanding what I've been going through and giving me the space to be able to do this. But I had to share it with her first for her to understand it, because she didn't know that this was the issue that I had. Yeah, it's a difficult one. And back to that doctor, yeah, the issue that I had is that this was constant with me. It got to a point where it was constantly down, constantly upset. And the only analogy I could say is it just felt like it was a grey day constantly. Oh, actually, and it felt like when I was at home, I wasn't at home. I wanted to be home. And it was just a state of flux. I just didn't know what it was. But being able to tell the doctor, you soon realize that the amount of stuff a doctor will hear in a day, my story was probably forgotten quite soon after the appointment. But for me, it was a constant. For me, it was a constant pain. And so I had to be the one to go out there and get that done.
Yeah.
And so, yes, just to your point as well, just if you do feel that there's an issue, then have the confidence to go and share it with the doctor.
Mm. And keep advocating for yourself. So, as you said, they may forget by the end of the appointment, but if you don't feel like you've been sorted, don't just give up. Just keep trying to get the answer to solve the problem, as we would in any other situation.
Yeah. Initially, I thought I was diabetic because some of the symptoms of thyroid is becoming lethargic. And so then I thought, well, this is probably blood sugars. So initially, I was expecting to find out that I was just going to be diabetic. But then I had to go back to the doctor a couple of times just to say there's something not right with me. And so usually with thyroid, it's your white blood cells are attacking the thyroid. And so that's usually the main indicator that there's something with your thyroid. But for me, that wasn't the case. And so I had to go back a couple of times. And then when I had the advanced blood tests, they find my thyroid levels weren't right. And so, yeah, it's a difficult thing, and everyone's an individual, and I'm not a medical practitioner and I don't have counseling advice, but it's that case of if something doesn't feel right though, then, and it's only within you and it's only within your mind, then you need to share it with others to make sure that you get it fixed. Because it's, like we're saying, it's not a broken leg. People can't see as easily that you've got something isn't necessarily clicking right. So.
Thank you very much. How can people get in contact with you?
Twitter is probably the best way. So the beauty of having a double barrel surname is that I get my own Twitter name and my own URL. So, but the only problem is that I've always got to spell it, especially on phone.
Well, I will link it in the show notes, but
yeah, so that'd be great. So I'm just at Denham Parry. If you could add it to the show notes, that'd be great. And absolutely. Yeah, that's the thing as well. I'm more than happy to have people message me directly, give me DMs. My messages are open. Yeah, it's anything that I can do to help others out. I'm more than happy to do.
Thank you very much. And I would love to have you back if you've ever got anything you'd like to talk about.
Cool. Well, I think probably in the next year, I've got quite a few things lined up now for this year. So hopefully I've got some really exciting things to talk about at the start of next year. So
that'd be fantastic. Just reach out. So thank you, Lewis. And thank you everyone for listening. Until next time, remember, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.